Hi everyone, Christi Reece here. It's Team Tuesday. Woo-hoo! Chris Myers is here today and we are going to talk about irrigation water and all kinds of different things like
potable.
I don't know. We're having a little discussion about how to say that word. So what do you think?
Well, let's go with potable water. So here in the Grand Valley, there are essentially two types of water. The first one, either potable or potable, however you want to pronounce it. The other one's irrigation water. And potable water is pretty straightforward. You know, that's what you get out of your tap. That's what's drinkable. That's what you're going to use in your house.
Or your well.
Or your well.
Come from your well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So here in the Grand Valley, there are 4 different providers for potable water. We have the city of Grand Junction, we have Palisade, we have Ute, and Clifton. So these are all the 4 different water districts here in the valley. Nothing too exciting there, but one fact that I did tell more. One exciting fact that I did find out is that our drinking water comes from the Canna Creek watershed, rather than the Colorado River. So I was unaware of that until this morning.
Ute, it does. Ute water has really high quality water ratings. When you look at their annual report, it's always really good.
Yeah, so that's kind of potable water in a nutshell. So before we dive into irrigation, I wanted to talk with you guys about water laws in the US. So there are 2 different doctrines that are practiced in the US as far as water laws are concerned. The first one is the Riparian Doctrine, and that is used in the eastern United States. Essentially what that means is if your land borders a body of water, then you have the right to beneficial use of that water. Does anyone know which one we practice here in the western United States? What was that?
What are our choices?
Well, there's only one more, so it's the doctrine of prior appropriation.
I think it's that one.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So what that means is essentially breaks down to first in time, first in right. So if you were to pull water for a beneficial use out of a river or a stream or a lake, then you would have the right to the prolonged use for that same amount of water. So this dates back to the 1800s, and you know, people staked their claims on these water rights, and we're still seeing the effects of that today. So that brings us into irrigation here in the Grand Valley. You know, so irrigation, you know, we of course see the canals, ditches, and so on. So this is what is pulled from the Colorado River generally. I'll get to more of that later. That's what's used for watering your lawns, agriculture, essentially. Those are the main 2. Irrigation season here in the valley usually runs through April all the way through October until we start to see things maybe getting close to freezing. Get a lot of questions from people new to the area about what are these little streams going through?
Yeah. And there's waste ditches too, which sometimes it's hard to tell whether you've got a irrigation or waste ditch.
Yeah.
People have questions about those.
Yeah, there's drainages versus irrigation ditches, and it's a big deal here because without, you know, that infrastructure, being a high desert, we would not have this agricultural capacity that we do.
Yeah.
So there are 6 irrigation water providers here in the Grand Valley that service 85,000 acres.
Wow. That's an amazing statistic.
Can you guys name the 6?
Grand Valley Irrigation.
There's 1.
Grand Valley Irrigation. Grand Valley Water Users.
2.
Peaceful Valley Irrigation.
I haven't heard that one.
Orchard Mesa.
Sounds good.
Orchard Mesa Ditch Company.
Orchard Mesa, Redlands, Palisade, and then Mesa County Irrigation District. So 5 of those 6 pull water from the Colorado River. Can anyone guess which one pulls from the Gunnison?
Palisade.
It's Redlands.
Really?
So they...
That's right off of, at the end of Roseville.
Yeah, so 3 miles So 3 miles upstream from the confluence of Denison and Colorado is where Redlands Water and Power pull their water from.
Wow, cool.
Next thing we'll talk about is how water is secured. So one of two ways there. Water shares or by the land that you purchase, where with water shares, you essentially buy a certificate or a water share deed that you can sell or transfer. And you can use that for any place that one of these specific water districts services.
And those are transferable.
Right.
Yeah. So you can sell those, they're not tied to the land.
Exactly. And on the flip side of that, like you said, other water rights are tied to the land. So if you buy a 5-acre parcel in Palisade, you're going to pay an annual water assessment through your taxes, and that essentially covers your water shares for the year. And like you said, you can't share it. It's appurtenant to the land. So tricky. Water rights and water laws in the West are very tricky.
And very important. I mean, it's very valuable. And there's a lot of value here in the Grand Valley in the water that we have. We have really good water rights out of the rivers here, and we're really lucky.
Yeah.
We get to keep a lot of it right here.
One thing I've unfortunately heard of lately is that companies from out of state are buying water shares here in the valley.
Yeah.
And essentially moving those water rights downstream to larger areas like California.
Was bound to happen when those rights are severed. But we hope that we can keep as much of it here so that we can continue to have all the wonderful agriculture and green grass.
Right.
And yeah. I think another thing that people get confused about are water rights, because those are different than water shares, right? A water right is something that comes right out of the stream and is described usually in CFS. It could come out of a stream or a ditch or melt from the high country that comes down into a ditch. And we see that Colburn, Mesa, Gateway, some of those outlying areas actually will have cubic feet per second out of a water source. But most of the water here is actual shares from a company.
Yeah.
And it's not an actual water right, it's a share. Two different things.
And it essentially outlines the specific allocation, like per acre. It's based off a miner's share, which I learned was also figured out back in the 1800s. And there was never really a concrete definition of what that amount was. It was based off how much water miners were putting through their mining flues at a given time. So depending on where you are in the West, you're going to see different numbers. Like in Colorado, a miner's inch is equivalent to 1/38 cubic foot per second.
Wow.
So I don't know what that really means as far as how much water you're getting, but hey, so we got to do our research, especially when we're coming down into real estate and contractual issues. We want to make sure that we're securing water rights for our clients. What have you guys seen on that end as far as a contract?
There's some confusion with HOAs. The water that is distributed through an HOA versus your shared water. So you guys want to clarify that?
Yeah.
Well, the HOA actually owns the water, and the individual homeowners just get the use of it, but it is owned by the HOA. So.
One thing also is we purchased a home that did not have a shared water, and so we purchased a shared water because it was bank owned, and so we were able to do that and then irrigate because we have over an acre of property that we need to irrigate.
There are shares that can be purchased in the different water districts.
And going back to the HOA component, so the ditch manager, the ditch handler turns on and off, to your point, Chris, the irrigation for the neighborhood, and then you're responsible as the homeowner to pump it out of, so you've got your own pump for your lawn, and then you set up your own sprinkler system. Some folks have asked if the HOA irrigation manager manages also their sprinkler system, and that's not the case. They're just managing the irrigation water through the main ditches, and then you pull it off of that.
Yeah. And in a lot of subdivisions, you have a pressurized system that doesn't require you to have your own pump,
Right.
but just a filter. And generally, we think that one share of water is enough to cover 1 acre and service whatever you want to do on 1 acre, whether that's a crop or just grass, or, you know, that one share per acre is sufficient water in this valley.
Yeah.
And you could get by with a half a share per acre depending on what you want to do. But the agents on the Christi Reece Group are happy to advise you about what's appropriate water for your property.
Yeah. We practice it all the time, you know. So if you guys have any additional questions, you know where to find us.
Yep.
Anything else, guys?
All
Hope
right.
you enjoyed Team Tuesday.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.